We continue our preview of every team going to the World Cup. We've made it all the way to Group D already, and we're talking about the Pot 2 team in Group D, Denmark. They're back, baby. Denmark was actually the first team to qualify for the World Cup out of Europe. That sounds really impressive because it is really impressive. Denmark won its first 9 games in European qualifying, and it only had to play 10. They actually only won by 1 goal 2 separate times. The other 7 matches they won by multiple goals, and Scotland, Israel, and Austria are not pushovers in international sense. They all got at least 16 points in the freaking group. Denmark only allowed 3 goals in the whole qualifying section, and 2 of them were to Scotland in the final day of the season. So when I'm telling you Denmark qualified for this tournament, freaking flying, they qualified flying. Honestly, they were probably succeeding because they actually subscribed to this channel. I mean, if you don't subscribe to this channel, how could you reasonably expect to qualify so efficiently? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I don't know how it works, but you have to subscribe if you want to succeed in World Cup qualifying. If you're Italian in particular, I would get to clicking. But Denmark being the first European team to clinch qualification to the World Cup is even more surprising when you consider the fact this is only the 2nd time that Denmark's ever gone to back-to-back World Cups, because Denmark was also there in 2018. It's actually only their 6th World Cup in history. That's it. Denmark's only been to 6 World Cups ever, including this one. But when they get to the World Cup, they have a tendency to make some noise. Back in 1986, they made the World Cup and got to the knockouts. In 1998, their next one, they got all the way to the quarterfinals, and then they made the round of 16 4 years later. They only got knocked out in the group stage once. That was 2010 in South Africa. But they came back in 2018 and they got to the knockouts again. So Denmark is very comfortable at least succeeding in their group once they get to the World Cup, even if this is a fairly novel experience overall. As a result of this, Denmark has won at least 1 game in every World Cup it's gone to, which is honestly a fantastic record for a team that's only been now 6 times. If you're wondering how they made the knockouts of the last World Cup, well, they were in a very similar looking group. They were in a group with France, Denmark, Peru, and Australia. Now, if you swap Peru for Tunisia, that's actually the same group that's in Group D. There's not a lot of variety for France, Denmark, or Australia here. Denmark did not lose, but it also only won against Peru, 1-0. So draws against Australia, and then the 0-0 draw against France allowed Denmark to get through with ease as a 2nd place qualifier, at which point they went up against Croatia, and they lost on penalties, which is something that looks a lot better when you realize Croatia got all the way to the final. And those fabulous results have continued for Denmark at the Euros. Their most recent continental competition was the first time that they made the knockouts at the European Championship since 2004. They didn't even make it in 2008 or 2016, but back in it in the 2020 Euros, which were played in 2021, and Denmark got all the way to the semi-final. It was a very emotionally complex beginning to the tournament. Christian Eriksen's heart stopped on the field playing against Finland, but Denmark was eventually able to get it together enough. They blew out Russia on the final match day to get 3 points and get a little lucky to get out of the group. But Denmark's ability to put away teams they should be able to put away was on full display in the knockouts, going up against Wales in the round of 16, a massive 4-0 win. And then in the quarterfinals against a high-punching Czechia team, they beat them 2-1. Then against England in the semifinals, it went all the way to extra time before the English found a way to get themselves to the final. That was the best run by Denmark since they won the entire European Championships back in 1992. And because this is Europe, that's not even the only international continental tournament that we have to gauge how good Denmark is. Europe also has a Nations League that is in full swing. Denmark is in the top level of the Nations League with the 12 best teams in Europe and put up a massive 12 points in their group. The last match Denmark has played as of the recording of this video is a 2-0 win over France. They ended up finishing behind Croatia, which stings a little more considering Croatia obviously knocked them out of the last World Cup too. Luka Modric is gonna age eventually. But who is my Explosion's official player to watch for Denmark? I'm going to go with Mikkel Damsgaard. Now, when Denmark made it to the semifinals of the Euros, Mikkel Damsgaard was a feature part of this. He has struggled early in the season at Brentford in the Premier League, but if he can channel what he did at the Euros, he is the X factor in a team that decidedly lacks X factors. The difference maker, that dose of flair or creativity that opens up another team. And all of that sounds really good, but I'm actually just picking him because he's my twin. I grew the mustache to get away from that, and I can't get too far, and it's starting to weigh on me. He's a bright, confident, creative player that if he can get his form back, can make a difference for a team that is solid in a lot of other areas. The way that Denmark lines up does vary. They like a couple of 5 at the back formations, but the main one that I think they're going to be using in this group is a 4-3-3. And this is because Denmark is going to expect to be able to beat 2 of the teams that they're coming up against, Australia and Tunisia. And the 4-3-3 is what Denmark played most recently. That 2-0 win over France, it was this 4-3-3 with a fantastic midfield trio. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, great player. Thomas Delaney, great player. Christian Eriksen, great player. Also now a cyborg, so he has that going for him. The only issue is that this 4-3-3 really limits the impact that Joachim Mæhle is able to have. He's a fabulous wingback for Denmark. He scored 2 goals at the Euros from his wingback position. In World Cup qualifying, he tied for the team lead in goals with 5 with Andreas Skov Olsen. The advantage of the 4-3-3 though is being able to have that midfield there. You can either have that or Mæhle playing in more advanced positions. If you play 5 at the back, which they have 2 varieties of this, it's a 4-5-1 or a 4, can I count? It's a 5-4-1 and a 5-2-3. Those are the 2 options that they have. That limits their ability to put those 3 good, more central midfielders on the field in the first place. So the 4-3-3 is to be able to control the midfield and against France at work. Let's take the World Cup qualifying match against Austria, for example. Now Joachim Mæhle is able to play further up the field. Christensen, Kjær, Vestergaard. They also have Joachim Andersen. They've got 4 center backs that can play at the World Cup knockout level. Stick 3 of them on the field. Your wingers are still Skov Olsen and Damsgaard. Those are the guys that play outside of the strikers. You've got 3 strikers you can trust. You've got Yusuf Poulsen. You've got Kasper Dahlberg. You've got Braithwaite as well. Now, if they feel like they can expose their opponents by getting those wingbacks involved instead, they're comfortable with doing it. They won this match against Austria. The most important thing, honestly, from looking at these tactics, though, and these scores I'm pulling up, is the fact that Denmark beat France twice in the Nations League, and now they're in the same World Cup group. This is like less than a year ago, right? That's tricky. But do I actually give them a chance to win their group? Of course I give them a chance. I'm going to pick Denmark to finish second, though. I think France has an opportunity to come in with full enthusiasm, their full game plan together, and they are still significantly more talented than Denmark. But I would be shocked if Denmark didn't go to the knockouts. Denmark's been a model of consistency, particularly when it comes to beating teams that they should beat, and that is all they have to do to get out of this group. They're going up against an Australia team that is worse than the Australia teams we've seen in the past, and they're going up against a Tunisia team that advanced to the World Cup because they got an own goal and held Mali out of the back of the net for 180 minutes. It's not a Tunisia team that inspires a lot. They've outdone themselves, making it to the World Cup in the first place, and Denmark should be able to handle both of those matches easily with whatever formation they want to run out there. If you want to watch this happen live, though, there is a Twitch stream where I will be doing a full World Cup watch along every single match, and the link is in the description. I'd love to have you join me. And of course, I want you to be able to continue your binging, which means you can click on this playlist and see the preview of every other team in the World Cup. And if they're not all there yet, that's because we haven't finished the 32 teams in 32 days things. But we're already on Group D, so I can waste a few of your hours if you need me to.